Stay up, get a block. Come on, Aaron, go, Aaron, go. Go, Aaron, go. Tiger pride, baby, you gotta have it. If you don't, we're in trouble. And that's the personal commitment to excellence. You wanna do the best job you can every time.
Up by Kurt Baylor. He's going into the end zone. Touchdown DePauw. Touchdown Tigers. I can't believe it.
How sweet it is. I'm able to look back on DePauw football with a smile on my face and say, hey, we put everything we had into the 4 years, but especially into those 4 Ronan Bell games.
Head and your heart. Play with your head and heart, man, and you come out on top. Remember, DePauw never quits. Let's go.
Playing with your head is doing what you're supposed to do. Playing with your heart is doing what you might not be able to do, but you do it because you want to do it.
We never quit because we just kept coming, knew we could be better, and we worked hard to do that. And it has to be in your heart if you want to do it.
In 1926, a DePauw student wrote, "A fighting spirit is the thing most desired by a school. No team can win without this spirit, and few can lose that have it." This is nowhere more true than in the world of football, where on every level, a certain fierceness of spirit makes all the players into heroes. But the battle is thickest and winning is sweetest here, in a place where the only reward is honor, where no money or fame awaits the champions, except the shining admiration of family, fans, and friends. This is the heart of football, the eye of the tiger. Over 100 years of sweat, fire, and clutch performance passed from father to son and coach to player. It is a winning tradition, the sacrifice and execution of the perfect play, the ultimate autumn tradition of hope. It is DePauw football, a tradition of excellence. The men who have played DePauw football represent the best of collegiate athletics. They are athletes and scholars, using precision and wit to produce prime-time performances.
They're getting a great education, number one. They're not selling that short. But the football is the icing on the cake.
You could take players from DePauw and Wabash and put them in Michigan and Ohio State uniforms and line them up and play in the Ohio State Bowl or Wolverine Bowl, and people would know the difference. Football is still all relative. To the good players, football is very important.
Their level of athleticism is equal to any, and they are one-upped only by more overgrown opponents. You'll find no whipping boys on these green acres. They are as skilled and as vicious as any Big Ten team.
All I knew was they had 11 guys out there trying to stop me, and I was working with some offensive guys trying to move the ball, and here we go. To me, it was all world football. You know, forget about the big schools, the Indianas, the Purdue's, and Notre Dame's. That was where football was centered, right there in Greencastle.
And it was here in Greencastle, Indiana, where the team was born in the spring of 1884. It was Butler University that threw down the gauntlet and challenged a group of DePauw men to an afternoon of raw play with no padding on a dirt field. After Butler won the game with 4 touchdowns, the DePauw team gave up on such a frustrating sport. They tried to sell their football with an ad reading, "Anyone wishing to secure a football cheap will find it to their advantage to address the DePauw football team." But the fighting spirit remained, and pride couldn't bear the label quitters. Quickly, the team was rebuilt. They elected their first coach, William Glenn, and won their first victory against Indiana by the fall of 1889. When W.R. McKean donated $500 in 1895, the team bought a football field. One of their first cheerleaders wrote, "Oh, the gridiron, how I love your dusty length," where the football boys gathered to prove their grit and strength. Grit was what these men were about, because in the early days both padding and rules were scarce. The team known as the DePauw Methodists methodically broke bones. A 1904 player describes his uniform.
The coach gave each man a pair of cleated shoes, stockings, pants with some padding on the front of the legs, and a jersey. For protection, he gave us 4 pieces of canvas and some cotton padding, and we were expected to sew these on the points of each shoulder and elbow. We also had headgear made of padded strips of leather, which, of course, didn't give much head protection.
This was the real Old West, the turn of the century, the anarchy of dusty small towns and straight shooters who hit, blocked, and bled. Whenever they were thrown off, they jumped right back on, knowing that every gang tackle would be a scarred knee schoolyard scuffle from their boyhood days.
I was called Slats in those days. Nobody knew my name in college, but they called me Slats. Well, Slats, come down here. Well, I went down there, but I didn't have my helmet. And the coach says, "Where's your helmet?" I said, "What? Back up there to see." He said, "Get your helmet. I'm going to put you in the game." Oh, I thought I was going to go after a bucket of water or something. But that was my experience of my first football game that I played in DePauw.
There were no college football divisions except between the bruisers and the bleeders. DePauw was described as a team that won't be licked, can't be licked. And on the field, they challenged Notre Dame, Michigan, Illinois, Purdue, and Army. Soon it was time to give their fighting spirit a name. Their suggestions were strange, like the Fighting Parsons, and wild, like the Yellow Demons. But in the end, they were named for the way in which they hunted, the DePauw Tigers. And they became very particular about their prey, the Wabash Little Giants, later known as the Cavemen. Wabash and DePauw first played in 1890, and in the following years it has become one of the oldest, sacrificial, wide-open rivalries there ever was. This game is not played, it is prayed. If ever a man were to prove himself, this is the game. In 1932, DePauw graduate Orrin Pfeiffer wrote to the sports editor of the Indianapolis News, declaring that a feud this fierce needed a trophy. Heads weren't enough. So the Monon Railway Company donated a 350-pound bell to accompany the winners home, and the rivalry became known as the Monon Bell Game.
1932, in the snow. It was frozen, the ground was frozen. The kind of cleats we had were made for turf where you dig in, and there was nothing to dig into, so it was kind of slip and slide. And that determined the nature of the game. Nobody got close to the goal. It was very difficult to cut or turn. You got started in one direction, all the defense had to do was stand in the way and knock you down. So nobody was able to score. It came out 0-0. It was that simple.
In this ancient battle between the cavemen and the tigers, it is survival of the fittest, and a man can redeem his whole career, indeed his whole life, by slaying the dragon in a Monon game.
It was a close game the whole way. tied up. And then I think it was 21 seconds or 19 seconds or something like that.
We were running out of time, and Gene Holiday faked an injury to get the clock stopped. We got poor old Gene carted off, and Freddie Williams came in. Actually, he was in, we found out after the game, illegally.
Freddie the Toe kicked the field goal, and it's the only field goal I think he kicked all year.
The train they call the Mona, the stories they still tell.
We were losing 10-0 at halftime, and it was a typical Wabash DePauw weekend where the rain and the sleet and the nasty weather was there, and the field was so bad at Wabash that I remember sinking my feet and looking down and couldn't see the tops of my shoes because the mud had covered it over.
Wabash and the Tigers from DePauw.
We went up and wore our white the first half. Equipment man had brought the black jerseys up. We changed the black jerseys. And we come out in the second half, you know, and they're all wet out there with in the mud and the grime. And we're coming out in these new shiny black jerseys, and the Wabash coaches are excited. They don't think we can do this. And you can see the rule books, they're slumming through the rule books, and of course, it was all legitimate.
I threw about 14 passes in a row in the second half, and I think I completed the first 10 or 11 of them, and had an incredible afternoon. So we wound up winning the ball game.
That is what it came down to. We won a lot of games, and from that we had fun, we had enthusiasm, and we had friendships and respect. Even though the books that you pick up in the church pews tell you, well, winning doesn't mean anything. It's the actual pursuit. Wrong. Because if you're pursuing for 20 years after something and you fail at it, that's not that much fun. You want to win, and we did, and that's what made the big difference.
The feeling of a big win is you just have to experience it to sense it. I mean, it's just it's really an emotional high.
Play with your head and your heart. This is the only delicate part of the game of football, that tissue-thin balance between a player's self-expression and the discipline of the team. And the moment of perfect balance is the emotional high, the flawless play, the leap of faith, when you reach toward heaven and the football falls into your hands. It was once said, we do not remember days, we remember moments. These are the moments in history which are unforgettable, and the memorable men who make them happen. Players like Fred Tucker, who at the beginning of this century distinguished himself as one of DePauw's greatest athletes. Tucker was never green and inexperienced. He was a varsity man from the moment he arrived. His all-around skills garnered letters in football, baseball, and track, more than any other athlete in DePauw history. And coaches like Raymond "Gawmy" Neal. Neal began his career as the enemy, becoming the Wabash Little Giants team captain in 1919. With the Washington and Jefferson squad, he played in the Rose Bowl in 1921. He brought his love for football and hands-on coaching techniques to DePauw in 1929. In defiance of the Great Depression, his first season's record was 6-1.
Gawmy Neal was just more than just a winner. Gawmy Neal was a fine person. He was a fatherly figure to the players. He took care of them. Just remember, think of this scenario in the 1930s. Gawmy Neal coaching here at DePauw during the Depression. No one had any money. I mean, they were getting clothes from Goodwill, feeding them out at their home.
The quest had begun. Neal showed his knights every thrust and parry.
He would count out the steps for us, tell us how many steps to take. If we were, for example, if I was playing right half position and was going to block out somebody, I would take so many steps this way and then come back like to my left to block the opponent, and the runner would run around behind us. And we did this to perfection.
Gawmy wasn't at practice, he was in practice, throwing men down and showing them what to do. he introduced his men to planned sequences by the offense, drilling them on balance, blocking, and faking. It was straightforward ball which took them straight down the field to a 7-1 record the next year. It was, many believed, the best the team could do, the best they could be. Neil had taught summer camp with Pete Vaughn, coach of the Little Giants, and Newt Rockney, coach of the Fighting Irish. He showed his team how to play with their heads as well as any Irishman. But for Gaumy, that wasn't enough. A man can't find the Holy Grail with a detailed map, but no faith.
Every Sunday morning after the game, he made a tour of the campus, visiting everybody who had been in the game to see if they were all right. And if you weren't, he personally took you down to the training room and saw to it that you were treated right away Sunday morning.
Checking on his men was Gaumy's religion, the extra concern which gave his team heart, and lo and behold, a miracle occurred. In the first game of the 1933 season, Ball State tried for a field goal. The snap went back, the kick went off, but it was blocked. DePauw captain George Lortz scooped up the ball on the 1-yard line and scampered 99 yards for the first touchdown of what would become the great shutout season.
Gaumy was strong on defense. We didn't just always, break out and score all over the place. We waited, and you got a break, and you scored. In the meantime, you didn't let the other guy score.
In fact, they didn't let the other guys move. When playing the 33 team, you could wave at your end zone, but never really say hello. And in the middle of your wave, you were stuffed. The season score, DePauw 136, everybody else, 0.
We didn't realize that for 60 years we'd be talking about it, or that we would have a team that was molded together then so that we are sort of like a family. And we didn't realize at first how significant this was in terms of total football.
These were the heroes of the miracle season, undefeated, untied, unscored upon, champions. The unbelievable 1933 season was almost repeated in 1934, when the Tigers shut out their first 5 opponents until they gave up 1 touchdown while whipping Georgetown 46-6. There were many, many more winning afternoons, Saturdays and Sundays, when moms, dads, girlfriends, and buddies tramped down to the field with sweaters, hot cocoa, and hope, watching their boys become men. As they all learned the lesson of author James Michener, who said, "Character consists of what you do on the 3rd and 4th tries." The fans knew one thing as they rose from their chairs cheering: these young men had character. To honor their fighting spirit, in 1941, Mrs. Ira Blackstock donated $80,000 to build a stadium, press box included. This homestead of the Tigers, Blackstock Stadium, has become as much a part of the winning tradition as the fans themselves. But all too soon, these afternoons would be shattered by a far more deadly combat. As World War II roared overseas, young men were called to battle. In particular, one Robert Steuber, an All-American from the University of Missouri, who was recruited by the Chicago Bears just before being drafted by the Navy. He then came to DePauw University, which served as a home and training camp for Naval Air Corps cadets.
And we no sooner got into our barracks than a call came out on the bullhorn to report downstairs. And we went downstairs, and they called by name each of the fellows that had played football in college. And they took us right out to the stadium. We met Gaumy Neal, and they issued a uniform, and that was it. We played ball.
Steuber and the Navy players would arrive in time for the second game of the season, missing a tie against Oberlin in the season opener. After only 2 days of practice, Steuber led the Tigers to a 50-0 win over Illinois Normal. In his first Old Gold homecoming game, Steuber would rack up 255 all-purpose yards and 25 points on 4 touchdowns. He would go on to become the country's leading scorer that year. When the Wabash cavemen were eaten alive, 33-0, they refused to come back for more.
A lot of glory was heaped upon me because I was making the touchdowns. But you know there's 10 other people there that got to be in the way of somebody else to get you to that point where you can do it.
Averaging 34 points per game, the powerhouse Tigers challenged Indiana and Purdue, who wouldn't risk their records by losing a game to a smaller school like DePauw. Always the gentleman, Coach Neal would play his first string for only 40 minutes. This kept the score below 50, allowing other teams to save face. The blowout continued with a season score of DePauw 206, everybody else 6.
Gami welded it into really a fine organization. One of the finest gentlemen I've ever known in my life, and I say that sincerely.
"1945 was Gami Neal's last year as the coach of the Tigers, and the school, the nation, and the sport of football needed time to adjust to the bizarre developments of the 1950s, more television, rock and roll, and new publicity for those strange men who played football for money. Rough seasons lay ahead for the Tigers as they searched for identity in the melee of modernization. There was a voice in the wilderness. Coach Mike Snavely led his 51 team to a 7-1 season, the best doing since 1933. But it was not until the end of the decade that the man emerged who would lead the Tigers ever forward. He was a Hall of Fame quarterback for the University of Maryland, who went on to play and coach for the Washington Redskins. After his professional career, he returned to his alma mater to coach the Terrapins, but there were higher powers to answer to, so in 1959, Coach Tommy Mont came to DePauw.
Just want to ask, have you been back to Indiana?
Congressman, I've been to the great state of Indiana, and I found the people there to be very receptive, particularly down in Greencastle, and I'm looking forward very much to spending many enjoyable years in the state of Indiana. And
fellas playing on the team gave everything they had, and so it wasn't any different as far as coaching and the players and the strategies and things like this, but it was a little different setting.
If you have all those ministers out there, I'm sure that we go up against Butler and Wabash in those schools. We're going to need a lot of praying, so I look forward to that.
To be a good coach, Mont knew, he had to satisfy the basic needs of a group of heroes: food, shelter, companionship, and a goal. The food was the easy part. He had all the meat and potato football basics his team needed.
We decided when we came out there that our players were going to be, in fundamental football, they were going to be well-versed. And I think they were. And I think it showed up, particularly in the Wabash games, that when we played schools of comparable size and comparable talent, I think our fundamentals paid off.
4 words: pay attention to detail. That's the one thing I remember about him. It took me 4 years to figure out what he was coming at or what he was doing, but as a coach, you know, from his perspective, if a play doesn't work correctly, it's because somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do. You need 11 guys to do exactly the same thing each time, and if you do that, then plays work, teams work, you win games.
Next, Mont looked for the proper companion for the team. It had to be someone better than a sidekick, someone with a love for the game, someone with all the energy, encouragement, and admiration heroes needed. What better companion for the Tigers than the Cat Man, assistant coach and defense man Ted Katula.
He was always in control, and he never yelled and screamed. That's why he hired me. He needs someone to yell and scream. I did all the yelling and screaming.
They were like frickin' Frack or Mutt and Jeff, if you will. Yeah, totally different personalities that worked.
I can hear him on the sideline saying, "Coach Mont, throw the bomb. Coach Mont, throw the bomb." You know, we were running a wishbone offense, you know. Oh, he would be so excited. I think he really loved what he did, and he always had time to talk to the boys.
Now that they had food and companionship, they needed shelter. As the cold wind of competition sapped their spirits, a savior arrived on a Greyhound bus with all the shelter a team could need.
Dick Dean from Washington, D.C., one of the first black players we had at DePauw. And he could have played any place in the country.
Richard was about 6'2", 225, and my goodness, he could have started at any position on the field. He could have started at quarterback or tight end or offensive tackle. He made it with the St. Louis Cardinals when he left DePauw University, first team, little All-American college division, by the way.
Richard and I had a little thing where if I tapped him on the fanny, he knew that whatever play we called was off, and we'd just run a quarterback sneak. So, gee, there was this big hole, and I gave Richard a little shot on the bottom, and there we went up the middle. And I still remember the look on the face of the defensive halfback as Richard was bearing down on him. This guy probably was 5'6", 130 pounds soaking wet. And I remember his eyes opening up the size of saucers and then just going down like a bucket of tomatoes.
He used to imitate me, and before every Sunday night meeting, Dick would get in and I'd hear him down the hall. We'd be sitting down there. We'd be laughing just as hard as the players were, but he'd be up and he'd be imitating me. But Dick was another fine football player.
The last thing Coach Mont needed, he didn't have to find. Because when the clock began ticking and the ball took flight, he saw the goal in the eyes of every one of his heroes, to never quit. He would continue to see this determination throughout his 18-year coaching career in men like Bart Simpson, who in 1973 set the all-time season record for rushing at DePauw.
Bart Simpson, one of the great running backs, the first 1,000-yard rusher in the history of DePauw University, was a great player.
Bart came down to visit DePauw, and was a highly recruited and touted athlete out of Proviso. I think it was in somewhere in Chicago suburbs. And his mother and father were with him. And the thing that sold his mother was the beautiful trees out around the tennis court. And so that's how we got Bart Simpson, because his mom liked those trees. And I told her they stay in bloom all year round, you know.
At that time, Coach Mont liked to run his unbalanced line and his 96 block down, which we had 2 tackles, you know, and a running back kicking out on a tackle and a tight end, so Bart could run off tackle. And he'd just tuck that ball under his arms and lower his shoulders, and he was a north to south runner. He really ran hard.
I carried the ball a couple of times, and we're playing on one of those baseball fields. You know, you get tackled and dust comes in your nose and your face. And those guys, oh, they were bad. They would tackle you and they start talking. And they were calling you names and everything, and I did not like that at all. And then that motivated me. And then what happened is, I guess I remember I started hitting back. They hit me, and when they come up to try and tackle me, I give them a forearm. And it started to work. We started to move the ball, and we won. I remember calling my dad that we won the game, and I think that was the first big win. And from there, things kind of went off. As a team, as a group of players, it was we went to another level playing after that, I thought.
Another level is a place where the great teams live. When straining muscles relax to run smoothly once again, and the mind connection happens between quarterback and receiver, player and coach, the man and the moment.
Our defense hadn't been tackling well, and Coach Mont threw the ball to one of my fraternity brothers. His name was Ken Harris, and he was pretty quick, and he took off around in. And Coach Mont, without pads, you know, any protection at all, he just like wraps him up. I mean, like head across the numbers, wraps him up, takes him down. I mean, he sticks him, puts Ken Harris on his back on the field, and told us, you know, that we needed to start tackling people, you know, and get fired up and motivated. I mean, everyone just loved it. Everyone just howled because it was such an emotional, physical, reactionary type thing, which he didn't commonly do.
He got intense. He paced back and forth. He'd give me his look. You know, I mean, I kind of felt that I was carrying the weight of the whole team, but of course he looked at everybody that way. And that was part of the psyche that any good coach is going to get on a player. You know, your job is to do or die, not question why. You know, and that's pretty much what Tom was. He paced back and forth, and just by osmosis or something, you started to gain that intensity.
It was this intensity which made Mont's Tigers stunning under pressure. When Mont's teams played the Monon Bell rivalry game, they proved that mental giants could beat the little giants any year. In 1976, Mont retired as head coach, but with a career record of 12 wins, 5 losses, and 1 tie, Mont remains the greatest of Monon strategists.
You can't fill the shoes of a person like Tom Mont in a program. You just can't do that. Tom is a living legend.
The Tigers entered a transition period, including 2 tough seasons under head coach Bob Bergman. In an effort to turn the team around, Coach Jerry Burnt came in from Dartmouth.
Right from day one, you knew that Coach Burnt was going to be ready. He came in with a good attitude and worked as hard as I ever worked as a football player. And I knew it was going to be a tough transition. He knew that we were not very successful in the past, and he had been successful and wanted to continue to be. So it was a smooth transition. He came with a new defense, more aggressive defense, and more aggressive offense.
I was fortunate to walk in and have a very good group of players who maybe wanted a little more direction, a little more guidance. You know, maybe I helped them make football more important to them, and I thought we worked on some things that made them better players. I thought we made them a little tougher. I thought we gave them a little more discipline. I thought we gave them a better direction as far as football was concerned. And I thought when they walked on the field, they really felt that they had a chance to win.
The turnaround Tigers were back in high form, going from a 1979 2-7 season to a 1980 7-2-1 season, doing more than mortal men could do. They sacked, scrambled, and hustled more than physically possible for men of their stature, proving that the body knows no limits when the heart and mind possess it. DePauw's greatest receiver is Jay True, who holds single game, season, and career records in both total receptions and net receiving yards.
Jay True is the ultimate competitor. Talk about a guy who never quits, who makes every play that's necessary. Totally smart, knows the game, knows where to go. You felt totally comfortable throwing him. Always knew he would be open. You need a yard, you need a first down. You knew Jay was going to get it, and that's why he was an All-American year in, year out.
The whole team concept in the 1980 team was the big thing about that team. We had excellent defense and had offense, a bunch of overachievers. We had a bunch of small guys that weren't real fast, weren't real big, but had a lot of heart.
While Jay True was catching, it was quarterback Robbie Doyle making the connection for the turnaround Tigers.
But Robbie just throws a football. It's just, I mean, it just kind of sticks in your hands, which for a receiver was really nice. But Robbie, tough quarterback, leader. If you could sum him up in one word, it'd be leader.
It was the victory of all victories. The Monon Bell, which would elude the firepower of the 1980 Tigers when they discovered that the only thing greater than willpower is time.
Scotty Welch and Jay True made that drive happen. Scotty made one catch where he was stretched out, and it was the only place I think I could have put the ball. That's being favorable to myself, but he made a great catch that preserved it. And I can remember one long play where we were scrambling, out of time, out of places to go. Jay came back, as he always did, made a big catch. And the final 2 catches, the touchdown and the 2-point conversion, both Jay True, same pass play. They just had a sense of where to go, where to be, and without that, I don't think we could have made that drive.
And then they drive down the field with all in the last 30 seconds and try a field goal from 47 yards out and just miss it. And it ends in a tie. The gun goes off and we look at each other like, the game's not over. Let's play some more. But and that was the end of my career.
And I would hope that I had left the players, and I would hope the program also, with a feeling that we can be successful, and if we just work hard and we hang in there together, that good things can happen.
Time told the legacy of Jerry Burnt. The Tigers were indeed turned around and ready to do more than just taste victory. Soon, the man arrived with a feast in mind. He came to DePauw after coaching at Northwestern, Indiana, Ohio University, and Ball State. And in 1981, his first season here, Nick Mourouzis led the Tigers to a 9-1 record, more wins in a single season than any team in school history. Perhaps it was just beginner's luck, or maybe it's his reputation as the consummate preparation coach, the chess master of the Saturday pigskin brawl. Whatever the case, it always helps to have a player along who can whip off the disguise and have a superhero afternoon. In the game against St. Norbert's, defensive back Alan Hill had not one, not two, not three, but 4 interceptions, which he ran back for almost 160 yards.
Oh, the H-man, he's special. He carried us on so many occasions. It's hard to count them. I can think of so many times we would have put him in at the wide receiver spot if we needed a big play, a kickoff return, a defensive stop, an interception. He's probably one of the 2 or 3 best football players, definitely, that I've ever seen or played with. And a great guy to boot.
He still holds the record for kickoff return yards.
I was just out there having fun. You know, it's like hit people, catch the ball, throw the ball. I could do that, you know. But, you know, focusing in on looking at film and going down there ahead of practice and doing extra things and those types of things, that's where it got it instilled in me that, hey, it's got to be in your heart as well. It's just, you know, the athletic ability is there, but if you want it, you got to do those extra things.
Those extra things are, of course, what legends are made of. Such talk evokes memories of the flawless 33 team, and to honor their memory, the 1981 team plowed the cavemen under.
Wabash has a 20-some game winning streak, and we go into that game, and I'll remember vividly at halftime, it's 14-7, and we're driving right before halftime. There's less than a minute to go.
DePauw scores with about 5 seconds to go in a half on 4th down and about 5. Just pass to Kevin Perkins, Robbie Doyle to Kevin Perkins, and the next thing you know, it's 14-14.
Head-to-head combat. With everything good at stake, one team had to break away and prove that for this year of the rivalry, their hunger was greatest.
DePauw won 21-14. I think it was the greatest Wabash game, just because of the situation. Wabash is 8-0, DePauw is 8-1.
By the end of that winning season, Coach Nick, as the players affectionately called him, set the standard for his career at DePauw, living proof of the fighting spirit.
You got to play with every ounce of your body, and you got to play with intensity. And we always talk about playing with your head and your heart. Just like Vince Lombardi said, you got to play from your toes all the way up to the top of your head.
Coach Nick followed his 9-1 season with 3 more winning seasons, imprinting his name on the record books. Though the course wasn't steady, it was always true. Case in point, the 1983 DePauw Tigers. Their defense was ranked #1 in the country against the run. But in this Albion game, quarterback Tony DeNicola threw 5 passes which were intercepted. At the time, it seemed that despair was his only receiver. But the voice from 1915 whispered, "We won't be licked, can't be licked." And DeNicola honed his skills with the help of Coach Nick. Within 2 years, DeNicola was the bishop of the bomb, setting another school record for throwing 5 touchdown passes against Kenyon, and 5 more against Olivet Nazarene, and 5 more in this Dayton game.
We play Dayton in a 4-game series. They're a power. They naturally have better players than we do, okay?
We were 8-1 or 7-1 going into the game, and they were undefeated going into the game, and it was at Black Sox Stadium.
We just have to hang in there, and we're not going to run it down their throat because we can't move them. They're good defensive players. I mean, we've always had trouble moving against Dayton.
We went back and forth with them throughout the game, And it was a very hard-hitting, exciting game.
We threw 5 touchdown passes, let's just face it. We threw 5 touchdown passes.
They went ahead of us with about 2 minutes to go in the game by, I think it was by 4 or 5 points with a score at the end of the fourth quarter. We came and got the ball with about 1:50 left in the game with no timeouts left. And so we went down the field in our patented 2-minute offense that Coach Nick practiced every Thursday and still practices every Thursday.
No huddle offense. We helped him maybe a couple times on the field. It was a 4th and 10 situation. He went to his 3rd receiver and hit it, kept the drive going. And the last play was a post corner down there from he to Tom Evans. And we ended up winning and winning that game, and that's one of the great, I'll remember that the rest of my life. And I had parents come up to me afterwards, fathers that weren't parents of our players, were just parents of students there, and said it was the finest game they ever saw.
In 1987, the Tigers passed for 2,400 yards and were ranked 13th in the nation. But the Little Giants were doing even better. They had a number 6 ranking and a shot at the playoffs. Thousands of fans turned out at Blackstock Stadium only to see the Little Giants' little playoff plans sucked down the drain. DePauw romped Wabash 33-11, the Tigers' 400th win in school history.
I saw the joy on their faces and how the other team walked off the field, holding their helmets in their hands, dragging them along, crying to each other. And when I saw that, I knew that I didn't want to have that experience. I certainly wasn't going to lose one of those games.
Not with these teammates behind you. Jeff Voris was DePauw's greatest quarterback, and in a career which spanned from 1986 through '89, he passed for over 6,000 yards and 56 touchdown passes, with more attempts and completions than any other. In the third quarter of this 1989 Anderson game, the Tigers were down 36-9, and Jeff Voris engineered an unprecedented comeback. 4 touchdowns in 14 minutes on the way to a knockout 37-36 victory. And Terry Dickey, whose legs scissored down the field in a savage ballet, setting the all-time record for all-purpose yards, a career leader in rushing, pass reception, kickoff returns, scoring, and anything else out there to run over. Dickey was the culmination of a long tradition of DePauw style. Tim Weaver, Dickey's predecessor in the all-purpose record books. Bart Simpson's incredible rushing, the artful dodging of Bob Steuber. The staunch athleticism of Fred Tucker. A century of heroics, each new generation exceeding the wildest efforts of the old, all the while helping the team to stay on top. In 1990, Terry Dickey was helped by his teammate, another career leader, Jason Stadler.
That was, probably as good as tandem as you'll have as Division III, with Stadler at fullback and Terry Dickey behind him. I mean, those were two. I mean, you had Stadler who could run inside and very quick. He could even go outside, and Terry Dickey outside, and it really made a fantastic tandem.
The 1990 season had started, however, with 2 losses to Hope and Ohio Wesleyan. Anymore, and the team had no chance of winning the conference title. After the Wesleyan game, the players gathered round on the field.
And we're sitting there, for the most part, crying and walking around out there in a state of depression, but in a tight-knit group. And Mike Dobosh, after we sang the DePauw fight song, Mike Dobosh said, "Well, guys, looks like we're going to have to win 8 straight."
After the opening 2 losses, DePauw took its frustration out on Rose Hulman and Franklin, including an incredible 202-yard rushing record in the Anderson game by Terry Dickey. With 7 wins and 2 losses, the Tigers needed one more win for the conference title, one more win to make it 8 straight. And the only game left was the rivalry, the Little Giants, the Monon Bell. The record for this 100th year of Monon Bell competition was tied. 44 wins, 44 losses, 8 ties. Could the Tigers win 4 bells 4 years in a row in the 100th year of competition? Could the Tigers become the Indiana Collegiate Athletic Conference champs, or was it time for DePauw to finally quit?
You know you've got 60 minutes out there to make it happen. And something like that doesn't happen very often in life, where you know this is your last chance, you've got this long to make it happen. What are you going to do? Are you going to come together? Are you going to play well? Or are you going to be overcome? Are you going to lose?
I can remember that same game in the second half. This was still my junior year during that championship season. Talking to Tom Mont and saying, Tom, I think we can get to the quarterback. What do you think? And he said, yeah, I can take out the guard and tackle. And Chris Greener was playing nose tackle. He took out the center. We called a blitz. It's set up perfectly, and thwarting their really last chance to come from behind and beat us. Those kind of memories you have, those kind of big plays. In a winning effort, those things you'll never forget.
Once I looked up and the final seconds had ticked off that clock, it was a sweet sweep. That's always how I remember it, is the pressure was off. Pressure was over.
With that sweetest of all victories came the Indiana Collegiate Athletic Conference Championship, the first conference championship in school history. 8 straight wins, and a perfect 7-0 record in the ICAC. And staring down the cavemen for the bell. The 1990 team still holds the record for most consecutive wins, the perfection of 4 years and 4 Monon bells. There was Gormy Neal and Tommy Mont and Jerry Burnt and many others. But by 1993, it was Coach Nick Mourouzis who had won more games in his coaching career than any of his predecessors.
The man who wins is a fella like Coach Nick Mourouzis who thinks he
It
can.
belongs to all those individuals, plus all the young coaches we've had as graduate assistants. And naturally, Coach Rahal and Coach Meyer, they've been with me for all 13 years. So the credit goes to those men. You win with people. And you win with good people, and that makes it easy. My name's attached to the winningest coach, but basically the credit belongs to the men in the battlefield.
If a fighting spirit is the thing most desired by a school, then it is here, perhaps, that a man can find what his heart desires. To use his body and mind, his head and his heart, in an effort to prove that, yes, I can save the day by being the best I can be. The autumn days of youth are perfectly preserved in a memory of the Monon Bell game. And warm victory is held close when cold winter sets in, as the boys, now men, look forward to spring. Victory is never forgotten by those who share it. It haunts us from the past, demanding that we equal it. It echoes into the future, a tradition of excellence. Though the games end and seasons pass, the team always remains intact. The family.
Some of the best friends that I've made in life were guys that I played football with, and some of my best friends that were here then and now are guys that I played football with.
There's one fraternity and one family that's the biggest fraternity on campus, and that's the DePauw football team. And that's the way we have to play. We're only as strong as our weakest link, and we have to all be pulling for one another.
You win when you fight for that extra yard. Reach beyond your limits to catch the ball. Make an impossible leap to block a punt. Bring home 4 bells in 4 years. You win when you carry on the Tiger tradition and respect the fabric of history, a weave of love and honor.
We
My junior year, we were down to a team by 29 points going into the fourth quarter. We ended up beating them by a point, and it wasn't even the last second deal. We ended up beating them in the last couple minutes. And we walked off the field, and Mourouzis got us all together and said, "Baby, DePauw never quits."
Play with your head and heart, man, and you come out on top. Remember, DePauw never quits. Let's go.